enabled. WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future.
Hello and welcome to this special series. WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future. I am now joined by Jaspreet Bindra, who's MD and founder, Tech Whisperer Limited UK, and Tanvi Ratna is founder and CEO, Policy 4.0. Mr. Bindra, I'll ask you the first question. And all conversations right now lead to budget, and there is a huge ask from the cryptocurrency and the blockchain market as well for some policy. Are you expecting a mention or no mention at all of this sector in this budget?
I would be happy if crypto is actually referred to or mentioned in this budget, or there is some reference to it at all. Budgets are not necessarily the best places for announcements like this, or there are state elections coming up a few days after the budget. And so I do not think that it might be the highest priority for the finance minister to talk about crypto in this specific budget, but we can always hope.
Okay. I mean, as you rightly said, because, the government has avoided revealing the new policy itself. We haven't even seen the new draft policy for that matter. But the hope is that we will at least see a categorization or a, discussion in the sense of on the definition, at least, of cryptocurrencies. Do you expect that much? Actually,
possible. See, basically what is needed, the whole crypto bill or the whole crypto policy really is a clarification of two things. Number one is that what is the classification of crypto? Like in some other countries, you have utility crypto tokens and you have non-utility ones, and some are allowed, some are not. And number two, what would be the taxation on it if it gets legalized formally? And what will be what bracket of tax, what kind of tax, will there be a GST or not, a different tax rate. So really, these are the two things we are looking for, and hopefully the first one happens.
Tanvi, as spoken, all roads lead to budget conversations right now, and you've been leading the policy conversations on this sector for some time now. What are your own expectations?
Yeah, I think now when it comes to crypto policy, we've really reached a space where I don't think anybody has clear, directional views on it, because it's always been very unexpected. You think something is going to happen in one term and then it doesn't happen, and then you move on to something completely different. But I think, for some time now, there have been debates in Delhi around, trading activity and advertising and, the whole consumer protection piece. So I think if there is to be something in this budget, I think it will be something that talks about the trading side of crypto and any kind of curbs around it, or, just setting some basic rules of the game around that. That would be my expectation, but I don't necessarily expect that we will have any mention in this session around cryptocurrency.
Tanvi, so one thing is very clear, that it's not going to be a payment medium, but as an asset class or even as a commodity or as a trading investment point of view, you think there could be some clarity coming in?
Yes, I do believe that for quite some time now, there has been focus on the trading activity side. And I think people are well aware that there were multiple meetings, even at the prime ministerial level, just on this aspect. And I think all the agencies have convened on that. The RBI also convened on this topic in December. So I think there is a view in the government when it comes to trading activity. And so if there is to be any clarity, I do think it will be on the trading aspect of crypto tokens. I don't think we're going to go into the NFT or, the other aspects right now.
There are various ways cryptocurrencies are transacted. Are you looking at such a deep, or do you think the policymakers ready with that kind of a detailed policy?
Yeah, if a detailed policy happens in this budget or otherwise, Manisha, I think India will be one of the first, if not the first country to actually have one. All over the world, and I'm sitting in UK right now, and whether it be UK, whether it be the US, multiple other countries, no one really has a detailed policy. The Prime Minister has gone on record saying that for such a detailed policy, it probably needs to be a world consensus. And I think in the absence of that, I would not be too optimistic about a very detailed policy. I sense that the can would be kicked further down the road, and we will have some visibility, but not the full visibility that we want.
All right. So even as we are waiting for some acknowledgement, some policy, some supervision, do's and don'ts even. But there's one thing very clear in the last few months that we've heard so many times, and that clearly is the tax part of it. You have to pay a tax on this. Some clarity on tax, because budget is all about duties, taxes. Do you see that being brought under some ambit?
If I was the government of India, especially if I was the finance minister, I would see a few things. There are at least 20 million people who transact crypto in this country.
Right.
I believe that there's a great number, the number of crypto, overall volume of crypto transactions in the country has been more than $5 billion. Now that is a big sitting duck for me to tax. And so making it legal would mean, as you rightly said, figuring out where the transactions happen and then taxing those transactions, and it could become therefore not only legal but a great source of tax revenue for the government. I think that's a low-hanging fruit, and a lot of it can actually be tracked. If you kind of while it's an intangible asset, if you regulate the wallets and you say that only such and such wallets can be used, and then the flows between the wallets as well as the flows between wallets and banks, if you track that and tax that, like a few other countries do so, it will be one step towards clarity and regulation, and it will also be a revenue source for the government.
The way the conversations are going, or the concept is, Tanvi, people are expecting positives, but they would rather not listen to any negatives. So it really is a bit of a tussle down there when it comes to cryptocurrency as a space. You spoke about taxations, and we've done a discussion on that. But what is your sense on the self-regulation that the exchanges are doing right now? Is it up to the level? Do you expect to be hearing something on that aspect?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the self-regulation body, not a lot of that is very public. So their charter, or what practices they're going to undertake, or a lot of this is not very public. So I don't think we can yet comment on it. And I think also this self-regulatory organization is sort of yet to really start self-regulating, right? So I think, I know for a while the exchanges have been working on this. So I think now they have their charter and everything in place, but we haven't seen it in action per se, right? And the only country we have to look to for this is Japan, where they have had the self-regulatory organization. And that really works because of the kind of framework that's laid out between the government and the SRO, right? So I don't see that we'll be coming to that place very soon, where the government and the industry will come to a agreement on what the SRO regulates versus what the industry regulates. So I think that's still a bit of a long road, but I think it's definitely a very welcome step that they are proposing this. And I think in India we saw the first SRO sort of take off last year, so it could be that this is a model that flies.
And cryptocurrencies clearly is just one part of the whole technology. So when it comes to blockchain and technology, and this is something that we've seen a huge push during the pandemic levels as well, which has been for the online technology. Blockchain has been adopted by various companies, and a lot of companies abroad also are working on this. Are we going to hear something on technology then?
The government has been talking about blockchain technology for a long time. If I remember the late Mr. Jaitley's budget 3 years back or so, even in fact, he had spoken about, that was perhaps the first budget speech in which blockchain had been mentioned. So was crypto. And the whole message was blockchain good, crypto bad. Now, the unfortunate problem is that you cannot really separate out blockchain and especially public blockchains and crypto. Crypto are the incentive mechanism for blockchains to work. And so I think what we are looking for is something a little more holistic, which doesn't only say blockchain good, but crypto we don't know. Because for real use on leveraging blockchain technologies by enterprises, by the government, also in the social sector, we would need some more of clarity today. While blockchain is a massive technology with a lot of optimism, still sometimes companies and investors and individuals are a little wary because the regulatory cloud around it is not yet been lifted. And so hopefully some of that gets lifted and blockchains also come into prominence. I also do want to say that while we have been trying to figure out what is the right thing to do, newer and newer technologies and products have come in. There are now NFTs, there's the metaverse, there's the Web3, so many more things than just blockchain and crypto.
With that, let's go for a short break. When we come back, the discussion continues.
WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future. WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future.
Welcome back, and you're watching WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future. And we are speaking to the two guests, Jaspreet Bindra and Tanvi Ratna. Well, the government did say that, they could be looking at banning private cryptocurrencies. I mean, that also is some time back, and there are private cryptocurrencies as well, which are private blockchains there. What is your sense within this space as well? Because there are social tokens, there are metaverse tokens, there are private tokens. This is a category in itself. Do you think even as things become clearer here, we could be looking at a filtering of what cryptocurrencies can be used or traded in India?
Well, that's a very good question, Manisha, and two parts. And one is, very funnily, most enterprise work on blockchains happens on private blockchains. It does not happen on the big, massive public blockchains like Bitcoin blockchain or the Ethereum blockchain, primarily because of the scaling up issues, the transaction fees, etc., being big barriers to it. And so actually enterprises form private blockchains, what are called permission blockchain sometimes, to make enterprise transactions happen. Now, layering on a cryptocurrency to that and therefore making it what is called private crypto, I think is just one more kind of crypto, as you said, and one more kind of token. What is happening, at least in some of the advanced countries of the world, and I think will happen in India also, is that there are thousands and thousands of tokens and currencies today. There needs to be a way to classify that, and also needs to be a way, frankly, to separate out what is really genuine versus stuff which has just been put out there. I will not name the specific currencies, but they're named after dogs and they're named after names of dogs and things like that. Those, I think, are just being put out there just to ride the wave. And so separating out what are real utility tokens or tokens which are brought out by real entities or stable coins or government issued cryptocurrency, definitely there will be a shakeup, and I think those are the ones which should be and will be encouraged.
PM has made the statement sometimes that there needs to be a synchronized world policy, but each one seems to be watching the other country, other developments, and we've seen some back and forth happen between various countries. Everybody's waiting for that concrete policy that the other one can narrate on. You think India would touch upon these topics before anybody else does?
Yes, it is very much our hope that India does touch upon it before others do, because I think that's the only way you maintain leadership. And I think India has for some time had leadership when it comes to fintech and the way we regulate fintech and the whole India stack approach. And so I think it is time for India to really step up and take a first step, take a risk. But I think the Prime Minister is absolutely right that on many topics, we do need cooperation. And on some of these aspects, there is already cooperation, right? So if you look at the AML KYC norms, those have been deliberated for years at the G20 level, the FATF level. And those have now come out as final guidance. So I think now countries around the world will start implementing these guidance. They'll start modifying their frameworks. So they are mandating these AML KYC norms. So I think when it comes to counterterrorism, anti-money laundering, there is already a fair degree of international coordination. Then on taxation, I mean, there is some work that's been done by the OECD, for example. So they have started looking at tax havens and things like that. And they are a body that's always played this coordination role when it comes to tax policy. So I think on these two fronts, we can expect that in the coming years, there will be much more harmonization. But when it comes to security laws and, frameworks around token classification or anything to do with the metaverse or all these things, there is no body as such that has this authority, and I think that will continue to remain a gap. That there's just no authority at the supranational level anywhere in the world, which can dictate things to this level between countries.
Tanvi, while taxation is one part of it, but we have seen a lot of investment flow into this space and field as well. How is government keeping track of that? Because whether it's in startups, whether it's DeFi, whether it's in various trading pools, and the personnel or the skills itself.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think not just investment, I think data in general. If you see even something like the user base that's been there in India, it's surprising that there isn't data on that, right, at the government level. Like, we don't know how many people are using crypto, which is a very bad place to be in if you're a policymaker. And I think that's why, we have suggested this India wallet approach to the government, where if we make, basic universal infrastructure around key registry or wallets, then that's a way where you can start bringing the activity some sort of a ring fence, right? And then you will have visibility into what is moving into your country, what's moving out of your country, what investment is coming in, what usage patterns are there, how many users are there, what is cross-border, what is domestic. We've laid this out in a lot of detail in our India Wallet report. It's also there on our website now, but we also had submitted it to the government. So I think now they are thinking seriously around these aspects, because that there's no way you can regulate something that you have zero oversight on.
Tanvi, while the volatility in the cryptocurrencies has been one part of it, and we've all seen that, and the regulators have commented on that too, there are fears about, of course, the impact of the monetary policies that the regulators also make. But to counter that, CBDCs is something that has been put forth. Are you expecting something to be said about that during this budget?
Yeah, I think we're all quite comfortable now with the unpredictability of the government on this topic. But I do see that on the CBDC we may not get something in the budget, but I do believe that by the second quarter, at least by April or so, we will start seeing the first few pilots or the first few communications from the RBI in terms of what they've been experimenting on in the CBDC. So I do believe the RBI is moving quite fast on the CBDC, right? So in some aspects, in some experimentation aspects, like we saw the offline payment circular that came out recently, right? They are experimenting with things. They have taken this approach of running pilots and testing and then coming out with some framework. So I do think that something similar we would see in the CBDC at least by April or so this year.
Even if we don't hear anything about cryptocurrencies, do you think a new step up or a date or what work has been done in CBDCs, any allocations, etc., could be heard this time?
Yes, I do think, while I'm not very optimistic about a crypto policy being rolled out, I am reasonably optimistic about a CBDC or some announcement regarding a CBDC, or at least a reference to that in this budget. Work has been happening on CBDCs in India. Optimistically, we might have an announcement for some kind of a pilot in the first quarter of the next financial year. That to me is the best case scenario for a CBDC pilot happening.
Mr. Bindra, if I was to take your final comments on what would be your top ask, one top ask from the finance minister this time around through the whole sector, what would that be?
I think the top ask would be one single word, and that would be clarity.
Yeah.
Clarity on, even if it says that, okay, I do not have a policy today. Clarity on the fact that there will be a policy in X amount of time. And until then, we are not going to keep on going up and down on figuring out whether we should do this, not do this, what should we do, what should we not do. Look, we're going to let it be, keep matters as they are until X time. And at this time, we are going to roll out a policy. And that clarity in itself, I think, would be a remarkable thing.
All right. Tanvi, I also have to ask you, what is going to be your top one budget ask from the finance minister for this space right now?
I would say that I think they should look at, wallet-based approach. And I do think that they need to define the broad principles first before they start targeting any specific activity, because I think that will only distort activity in the space. So once you regulate one thing and you close off doors to other things, then you are in a way distorting what innovation is happening in your economy, right? So I think first you need a sort of blanket standard, and I think that is the India wallet. So I would very much think that is something they should look into. But knowing the deliberation in the government, I, as I said in the beginning, I do think they will touch on trading possibly in the first scope.
With that, that's all the time that we have on the show. Jaspreet, Tanvi, thank you so much for taking time out for us today.
WazirX and CNBC TV18 present Crypto, Digital Assets of the Future. Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.